Okay. And
all right. What's up, everybody? So I don't know if my podcasts have been hitting the stream yet for Don yet, but I've been hijacking a few of these. And we have a very special guest with us today. Susan Lassiter-Lyons has put together probably one of the most foundational books of real estate investors that I've been, a part of. Almost anyone I've talked to has used that book to raise, I know millions of dollars, and it's called Getting the Money. And Don is also probably the person I know best personally that's raised the most amount of capital out there. And just wanted to hop on here because right now, amid COVID-19 and, a lot of confusion and uncertainty in the real estate world and the stock market and just the general world itself, I wanted to have the two best experts I could think of to chat about that, raising capital, how we can do it best. And Susan, why don't you take a second to introduce yourself to those who might not know of you yet? And if you don't know of her, go get her book because it is foundational for real.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you guys for having me. Hello, everybody out there. Seriously, this couldn't be a better time for this topic. I don't know. I'll just give you guys the highlight reel. I think if I was going to give you the full bio, we'd be, I'd have to write a memoir. Let's just say that. Started out way back in the day. I started a mortgage company back in 1999, and I had that mortgage company for about 8 years. And we worked exclusively with real estate investors. And I'm a real estate investor myself, was doing active real estate investing back in the day, fixing, flipping, landlording, worked my way up to multifamily syndication. Just kind of, I guess, inserted myself into some multi-million-dollar deals just because I had a special skill, and that skill was raising the money. So it's definitely something that you can use for your own benefit, and you can monetize that skill as well. And hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit about that today. Anyway, what I realized was, it's very lucrative, right? I was borrowing money when I first started from hard money lenders. And I realized that there had to be a way just to cut out that middleman. So I kind of bent the ear of my personal hard money lender, figured out how to raise capital myself, how to utilize it. And I folded that into my mortgage company. So we were doing just, the standard purchase loans and refinance loans for real estate investors, of which back then there were many. There aren't a whole lot these days. But then I opened up a private money arm, a hard money lending arm, where I think when it was all said and done, we had raised maybe just close to about $30 million for a private equity mortgage pool. We were making hard money loans out of that pool for 4 points and 15% interest, short term, 6 months, rehab draws. You guys are familiar with the drill. I'm sure everybody in here understands the gist. But I had an opportunity to create my own program, raise my own capital, write my own underwriting guidelines, and figure it out. Then 2008 happened. And kind of, the wheels didn't just fall off the bus, the wheels flew off the bus. And everything was kind of done. I ended up closing my mortgage company and shutting down my mortgage pool after making my investors completely whole, which was a miracle. And I'm so proud of that. But the reason why I shut it down was because all the exits were blown. When you are making short-term construction loans to real estate investors, there are two ways that you can get those paid back. They're either going to refinance that loan and keep it in their portfolio long-term, or they're going to flip it to probably like a new home buyer who's gonna, at least back in that day, use 100% financing. And what I saw was the writing on the wall was that all those exits were blown, and my main fiduciary responsibility was to my investors in that fund, and I had to get everybody paid back real quick. So shut everything down. Went to Mexico for Thanksgiving, laid on the beach in Cabo, and I drank and cried. Probably not in that order. I think there was more crying than drinking, trying to figure out what's going to be the next move. And I thought, this is a special skill that I have. And just like I had cut out the middleman with my own hard money lender, I thought, what, let me just teach real estate investors how they can raise capital on their own. And so I just started writing, and I put every single thing that I had learned, every lesson that I learned either the easy way or most likely the hard way into a book. Didn't hold anything back. I know a lot of you guys probably read stuff and it's really just more of a disguised commercial than anything to try to get you to join a coaching program or whatever. I didn't hold anything back. I'm like, look, if you want to learn how to do it here's how you do it. And here's the book. And it just kind of took off. That was back in 2015. I did some real estate coaching for a little while, had some real estate courses, just wasn't really my gig. So, now I'm semi-retired. I live in Palm Springs out here in the beautiful Coachella Valley. Kind of warm today. It's about 111 degrees. So definitely inside, and not going to go outside today unless I'm going to jump right in my pool. But over the course of, the last 5 years or so that book has been out, just kind of in, unsolicited, I guess, the feedback that I've gotten from people, I kind of keep informal track of how much capital people have raised using my framework. And right now we're at about a $500 million. So I just actually got an email from a guy earlier this week, and he was like, I just really want to thank you. We got your book back in 2015 and it really kickstarted our company. So far we've raised $11 million and we want to raise 20 million more this year. And I was like, cool. So amazing. That's what I do. I hang out in Palm Springs with my dogs in the sun by my pool and answer questions about raising private capital. And I get to come on fun podcasts with cool guys like you.
Oh, thank you for that. And it really is crazy. Because if people haven't read the book, it's very straightforward. It's not really all that complicated. You don't have to have a degree in mathematics. Like it's pretty, straightforward. And how you're talking right now, because it's the first time I've had a chance to really meet you, is exactly how you sound in the book. And I always like that authenticity in there. It's not like, I'm some woo.
I know. I worked with an editor, and I was actually approached by a ghostwriter, and they're like, oh, well, we can interview and we can, write your book for you. And I was like, well, what would that even sound like? People who know me know what I'm about. They know how I talk. My God, look at me. I just wear a t-shirt and shorts literally everywhere I go, even when I was raising private capital, by the way. So it's like, I just think that authenticity and that transparency and the ability, I think, people are always like, well, what's your superpower, right? I think that my superpower is the ability to simplify something that can be extremely complicated. And that's really what I try to convey in the book.
So Don follows a very similar philosophy to that, right? He likes to just kind of meet, hang out with people. I remember a story he told me when we were going to an event. He flew first class and raised like $100,000 in the seat. And he goes, that's why you got to fly first class. You want to share that story or the tools you're using, Don, as well, to help kind of build up your...
Well, it's just, to me, it's always been about having a conversation. I think that's what attracted to me to use, as far as the book and stuff, because your book was actually referred to me when I was talking about how I raise private money, and they're like, hey, I read this book and you do a lot of the same stuff. I'm like, that's cool. I went through it and read through it. And I think, like you said, a lot of people overcomplicate it. It's really a conversation. It's relationships. It's like, I go empty-handed. I don't go with the property or presentation. I go to have a conversation about, are we in line? Are our goals in line? Are we looking to accomplish the same things? And if we are, that's great. Then let's talk about what that looks like. And that's the way it's always been for me. And I've been very successful at getting whatever money I needed for whatever project. And so I've always been relationship based. I always try to do things to create relationships. I have this letter I send out with a Starbucks card that says, hey, would love to, I noticed you do this lending to other people, would love to meet and have coffee someday. Here's a cup of coffee on me. Let's do it in person. I do stuff like that. I do, the first class, I fly first class specifically because people with money fly first class. And, if you want to meet people with money, you got to be where they're at. And you just have conversations. And the one particular instance Mike is talking about, I was talking with one of my lenders about a project that was wrapping up and that they were going to be getting paid off within a couple of days. And they were wanting to know if I had any other projects to deploy their money in. And I hung up the phone and the guy started just grilling me with questions. And so it turned out to be a very lucrative conversation. But yeah, anyway, so very cool.
It's true. Once a private money partner, and I like to call them private money partners, by the way. I'm on this quest, and I have been on a quest to change the vernacular in this business. I think that when you call them private money lenders, it puts you in that subservient position. It makes us feel, creepy. I remember I had to borrow money from my grandmother one time when I was in college, and oh my God, I got nauseous. My palms got sweaty. You feel terrible. And I think that that's probably the basis of a lot of fear that a lot of people have. But it's like, you're very much essentially partnering with this person. They're partnering with you on this project. They're bringing the capital and you're bringing the skill. And what you find is that when they have a good experience with you, they want to keep having that good experience with you. You know, I remember my very first private money partner, his name is Rick. And I was so excited to pay off that very first loan. I was like, oh my God, it worked. It worked. You know, I mean, I was like shocked myself, I think. And I was going to do something really stupid. Like, you know, how you go to Kinko's and you get one of those giant checks, like Publishers Clearinghouse, you know, you take it to the house, like I'm paying you off, you know, with the big check and the balloons. In the end, I didn't do that because they wanted like $70 for it. And I was like, screw that. I'm not paying $70 for a giant check. But anyway, so I go to Rick's house and I'm like, Rick, I'm so excited to pay you off. And I like made this big presentation of giving him the money back. And he's like, whoa, I don't want that money. He goes, you better turn right back around and find another deal and put that money to work, because now that you're doing this, we're doing this. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's what you're going to find, you know, once you start establishing that relationship. And, you know, I'm so happy to hear you say that, because this is a relationship game. I always refer to this as relationship financing. And I think that the people who are trying to make it something other than that are probably doing it wrong.
Well, one thing I want to key in on there a little bit too is both Don and Susan had said this. They have people that they pay off their money they're lending to, that are lending to them, and then they get to use it again. So that's been my experience as well with the lenders I have, because I don't have a huge, large network, hundreds of people. I've got probably 5, 6 people that always keep me flush. And the thing is that 100,000, 200,000, 50,000, it can be, over the life of you partnering and having that relationship with them, could be $1 million, could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how many times you turn that or how you utilize it. So just because they might not have the millions of dollars you're hoping for, that 100,000, whatever the number could be, could end up becoming that over time, because you're using it in each individual property at any given moment.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a concept I actually wrote about in my book. It's called The Power of One, because the big fear is that you have to keep pitching and you have to keep getting all these private money partners. And it's just this never ending saga and, stress. And it's really not. You can accomplish whatever you want to accomplish, like you did, like I did, with just a handful of private money partners. If you have one private money partner who has, like $100,000, right? And you're doing like maybe one deal a quarter. I mean, what's your profit going to be? You could essentially turn that into a 6-figure a year business with one dude just funding your deals. If you're in a place where, $100,000 could, you could be all in with property. So you don't need a whole lot of people in your kind of stable of private money partners in order to have a very lucrative business.
I agree 100%. And that's one of the reasons why, again, I think I was drawn to, your book and the concepts in it, is because of the fact that, it's keeping it simple. You said something here in the conversation a minute ago about, they have the money, you have basically the deal, like the relationship part of it. A lot of people walk into these conversations and they feel like there's this power disadvantage, I guess. There's probably a better term for it, but the lender's here and we're here, and it's not. We're on equal terms when you approach it like a true relationship, right? Like a true relationship is a give and take on both sides. You realize that you're not better than them, they're not better than you. That it's do your goals align and can you do business together for the long term? And it only takes a small handful of those to really build success in your business. And that's, people overcomplicate it with fear, I think, in their head. People overcomplicate it by being, I think, submissive to the lender position. And really, I just want to hit on that for everybody listening. It's really about relationships. It's about meeting each other's goals. It's about being able to work together. It's about accomplishing, what they want to accomplish, along with helping you accomplish what you want to accomplish. And when you realize that there isn't this power play there, that it really is a true relationship, it really gives you a lot of advantage to go a long way in your business.
Totally. I have a friend, his name's Oren Klaff. He wrote a really great book called Pitch Anything. And he said something to me one time that just like, it's one of those like little toss away, throwaway comments that just kind of it blows your mind. And he said to me, you know what, Susan, money is ubiquitous. Money is everywhere. You can get money anywhere. I mean, look at the government right now. I mean, they fired up the printing presses, to the tune of $7 trillion. It's ubiquitous. Money is everywhere. He's like, all they're bringing to the table is money, and you can get it anywhere. What they don't have access to is an opportunity that's going to allow them to earn a profit on that money. And once, I kind of wrapped my head around that concept, it was like, okay, now I think the balance of power has shifted here, and the confidence level has jumped extraordinarily high.
So you both just mentioned the mindset side of the equation, and people that are just getting started, maybe they haven't made that connection yet. They don't know who to reach out to. How would you help or suggest people get past that mindset, right? Hey, I don't deserve this money, or I don't think it, or I have to be subservient, or I don't know anybody. And I guess I'll answer the question real quick on my personal side, because my best lender is my buddy's parents that I used to work with 7 years ago, and they just don't want to cash in Social Security yet. They want to stack it up until they can, and they love the checks every single month because I usually put them in long-term passive stuff. But how would you suggest people get started? Should they have that fear, or they don't quite understand that it is a relationship and the opportunity is the deal, not necessarily the money?
You got to start with who you know. It's the FFA bucket: friends, family, acquaintances. You talk to every single person that you know. Nobody ever wants to pitch anybody they know because they are like hiding behind this weird secret identity, right? And I suffered from this too. I mean, back in the day, even before I started my mortgage company, I was 17 years in the car rental business. When I was in college, I got my first job at Hertz Rent a Car, and I was with Hertz for a long time. And I was the car rental girl, right? Everybody in my circle, my inner circle, like if they wanted a discount on a car, I was the one they called. So I was the car rental girl. Well, then all of a sudden I'm doing real estate, and I was a little afraid, and maybe even deep down a little bit embarrassed to tell people that I was doing real estate, just because I was like, what if it doesn't work? What if I fail? And then they're going to know I failed. And then it's going to be a big deal, right? But I think that you have to get over yourself. You have to come out from behind that secret identity. You have to let every single person in your inner circle, your friends, your family, your acquaintances, the parents of your friends, your grandparents, your Aunt Betty, your brother, your father, some dude that you're sitting next to at the RIA, like whomever, right? Tell him what you do and tell him what you need. And people just have this inherent, this inherent ability to want to help. People really do fundamentally want to do what they can to help you, especially if they know you, like you, and trust you. Nobody wants to start there though, because of that fear. They're always like, oh no, I'd rather pitch a stranger. And I'm like, dude, if you want to make it 1,000 times harder on yourself, do that. But if you want to make it easy on yourself, just talk to your friends, your family, your acquaintances.
What would you say about that, Don? To get somebody started, maybe they haven't raised capital yet, and they're not going to that sphere of influence right away. I mean, what do you think best practices might be?
I agree with everything said. I think talking to everybody, I think going beyond that, like I raised private money by handing my card out at a play date and just saying that somebody was doing construction and I said, hey, I can help you with contractors, and I handed this mother my business card when I was picking up my son, and a few months later, her brother calls and needs some help with some projects, and they're not good at projects, but they have money, and I'm good at projects, but I need the money. And it became a good lending relationship. So I think it's letting everybody know what you do in anything that you touch, not beyond friends and family. It's any connection you have, you should be communicating what you're doing. There's always an opportunity to do business at every level, whether it's finding a deal or finding money. So
that's great. So
I'm echoing, what's being said here, but hopefully that helps.
What would you guys think the most, I guess, objections people are having to either raising the capital? And maybe we should even talk, because you both went through the crash. What's different between then and now? How can people, either, I don't know how the best way to phrase this is, how can we help people feel comfortable asking for people offering opportunities to fund deals in this time, because it's so uncertain. And being through the crash last time, it sounded like things dried up in a hurry. I don't know if we're exactly going through that or not, right? Because we are still in the midst of this. But what would you suggest to people that are saying, hey, now's not the right time?
I went through the crash. I lost everything. Everybody knows that. I'm very conservative in this particular situation. My part of the conversation when I have the conversations now are that I've been through it once, that I know how to adjust my business accordingly. So if you're somebody that's newer in the business, that I would make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people, the right experts, the right board of advisors, I guess, essentially, that you can get the right information from. Not arrogant information, but sound judgment and counsel from. And then when you're talking to a lender at that point in time, if they're questioning, you can come with your guns loaded, basically, on the fact that you've been counseled properly with the right information. For me, I'm buying differently. I'm moving faster on projects. I'm not buying certain projects in certain areas on the just in case, because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't have a crystal ball. We all hope that, when the real estate market right now seems to be on fire everywhere, and hope it stays that way. But there's so many things going on in the world economy that are going to have implications long term, and we just don't know what that's going to be. So we're making sure that we're looking at the right numbers, the right judgment, to make decisions. We're not speculating, in our purchases. We're not gambling. We're not going to Vegas and putting it all in black. So, I mean, that's my conversation.
Yeah, that's good. I would add to that, one of the best things that I ever did, and I think it comes because I have a mortgage background and an underwriting background, is I developed my very strict investment criteria. So I know exactly what I'm doing and exactly what I'm investing in.
Right.
And it also kind of helps me overcome that issue of what comes first, the capital or the deal, right? Because a lot of people will get a deal under contract and then they go out and try to get the capital, and that's the exact wrong way to do it, right? Because then you're under the gun. You have that repellent on you. Everybody's like, whoa, what's up with this desperado? You're not getting a penny of my money because you're cray. So I do something that I call a semi-specified offering. And it allows me to raise capital in advance of a deal because I know exactly what I'm going for. I mean, like right down to the zip code. Like I look for, 3 and 4 unit properties in these 3 different zip codes that I can purchase for no more than X amount of dollars, that'll have an ARV of this much. We're looking for capital, 100% loan to cost. That's going to be no more than like 65 or 70% of the ARV. And here are our exits. And what really helped me was like reverse engineering. So starting with the end in mind. So what is the ultimate goal for this property? Am I going to flip the property to a new buyer, right? And they're going to have to bring financing. And if so, I need to know exactly what the underwriting guidelines are for that program that they're going for and make sure they can qualify for it. Meaning you better get me like, not just like, some lame pre-qual letter, but I need a solid pre-approval letter from somebody, if this is going to be a deal. But more often than not, it was, I was going to keep it in my own portfolio as a landlord because I wanted that passive income. And so I was working with local community banks on loan commitments, basically what we called master loan commitments, where I was like, look, here's exactly the type of property that I'm targeting. I'm going to underwrite it to this, and then I'm going to take it out, meaning I'm going to refinance it with you, and it's going to meet all of these guidelines. So if I bring this deal to you when it's finished and it meets all of these guidelines, then you have a document that you've committed to me that you are going to refinance it, and I'm going to be able to pay back my private money partner. And that's what we did, right? The way that people get in trouble, right? And this happens with newbies all the time. It's, the spaghetti on the wall. It's like you're trying so hard to get a deal. And you'll take anything that comes down the pike. It's like, oh my God, I got a deal. He said yes. Woohoo, right? You don't know what the hell that deal is. You don't know how you're going to take it out. You don't know if it's going to qualify for financing on the end, right? You could end up with a condo with an with a condo board or an HOA that's in litigation, and it's not going to qualify for financing. There's always going to be some kind of weird little situation that is going to, throw a kink in something. So I always start from the end. I underwrite it to whatever my exit is going to be, and I never deviate from that plan. And I didn't lose anything in the last downturn. The only thing that I lost was my business, right? But I closed it voluntarily just because I knew that, hey, I'm not really going to be able to make much of a living now that all these exits are blown. It's going to take some time for this to come back, and I can do something differently. But I didn't have an investor who lost a single penny. They all made money. They actually were all mad at me when I closed the fund because the gravy train stopped. So I mean, you just have to be smart about what you're doing. And it all comes down to that very specific investment criteria that's going to solve a lot of problems for people, both when you're communicating the details of your deal, when you're raising private capital, and when you go to pay off your private money partner with whatever your takeout is going to be.
So to follow up on that question, then, when do you present that to your financial, your relationship partners? So are you coming with a, glossy packet full of information, or
God,
are you just
no.
kind of being able to tell them
Don't do that. Ew.
I know
No,
people
no,
that do
no,
that.
no,
So
no.
I'm gonna say, let everyone know. Don't show up in a 3-piece suit and
Oh my God.
a binder.
Look, the minute you roll up in a Rolls in an Armani suit, you've got made. You might as well have a sign that says "made off," right? Just tattooed right off across your forehead. No, nobody wants that. In fact, when when I raised the majority of my money at this Mexican restaurant that was about a half a block from my office at that time in Denver, called La Loma, I would say, look, meet me at La Loma. We're going to have some chips and salsa. They had those giant fishbowl margaritas, like it's the giant margarita that you have to with like both hands, you have to lift it. Kind of wish I had one of those right now.
Yeah, you and me both.
Anyway, and I would my uniform, it was and always has been like cargo shorts and t-shirts and flip-flops. And I remember I was training one of my new loan officers to raise capital for the company, for the fund. And he knew that we had this appointment at La Loma, and he had like this suit like hanging on a hanger on the back of his office door, and he starts changing. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm getting ready for a very important meeting at La Loma. I was like, oh boy, you're not coming then, because you're going to scare him off. He's going to take one look at you and run, right? The guys that we raise capital from are the millionaires next door, right? These are not the guys, I promise you, the guys that are showing up in Bentleys with 3-piece suits, they're leveraged to the hilt. They ain't got no money to invest with you, right? I want the guy sitting across from me who is like in his mountain biking outfit, all covered with mud, probably clomping in his golf cleats or his cleats from his bike, who's all covered in sweat, who's like, how much do you need and how much am I going to make? That's your person, right? You show up with a glossy thing and it's like, whoa, this is a corporate thing. The fees are going to be up the yin yang. They're going to mismanage my money and I don't trust them. You show up and you meet them on their level over a giant fishbowl margarita and some chips and salsa, right? Or maybe some guacamole if you're really feeling crazy, in your shorts and your t-shirt and your flip-flops. What are you like, really? I mean, it's all about alignment. You have to be in alignment with this person, right? On the flip side of that, somebody that was going to be rolling up in a Bentley or a fancy suit who saw me in flip-flops and shorts probably didn't want to invest with me. But guess what? I don't want them as a partner. That's not my guy, right? I always tell people this: as hard as they're looking at you to invest their money, you got to be looking at them, right? Because this is a relationship and I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that I don't like.
So to the relationship piece, I'm curious what both of you have to say on this, because we've all had them, maybe not necessarily in the money side of the equation, but what are you trying to avoid in a bad relationship? Because I have a few horror stories that probably pop up in my head about maybe a demanding lender or something along those lines. Like, what do you guys experience in that? And who do you try to avoid? And who do you, obviously we've just kind of talked who we're trying to attract, people that fit our bubble in a fashion, right? Not everything has to be exactly the same, obviously, but what are you trying to avoid? And what could be the challenges you come up with some of these lenders?
I'll chime in on the avoiding part. I couldn't agree more. I mean, Mike knows people call me the flip-flop flipper for a long time because I was in shorts and flip-flops for years.
Love
now
it.
I'm wearing jeans, but it really, I never show up with anything because they don't care about the project. They want to know whether or not you're the horse they can bet on. So I just want to second what you said right there. They want to know, it doesn't matter if the project's $1 million ARV and you're buying it for $100. If you can't get to the finish line and get them their money back, it's irrelevant. And that's, they care about you and whether or not you're capable of getting things done. So, and then as far as the lenders to avoid, it's just like I've had them try to pick the colors on properties and try to micromanage the process and, or just demand like so many different hoops to jump through. And the reality is at the end of the day, it's got to be functional. It's got to be set up for success for you to be able to complete the project with them and still maintain sanity, right? So you got to have that honest conversation. You got to be able to set boundaries as a borrower and say, look, I'm the man or woman in charge. I'm picking the colors. I'm picking the timeline. I'm picking the exit strategy. And you got to be okay with that. And if they're not, then that tells you right there that that's not the relationship you need to have, because at the end of the day, if you can't do your business the way your business is going to be successful, you're going to fail them. And that's not good for either one of you. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Love it. I couldn't agree more. It's all about setting expectations. I set very clear expectations right at the outset because there's this concept that used to recur, and occasionally it still does when I don't do a good job of setting expectations, but I call it the disappointment gap, right? There's disappointment occurs, that gap, when there's a difference between expectation and reality, right? So if they're expecting one thing, and reality is something else, there's a whole lot of room there for disappointment. And it's my job to set that expectation as close to reality as possible so that there is no gap, no disappointment gap whatsoever. It's all the same page.
And that comes back to what, both Don and Susan have said, is having very clear parameters, having a clear structure to what you're going to do, and then inviting the people in that are going to align with what you're trying to do. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, share updates with them, show them pictures. I would also, if you have more than one private money partner on a deal, please, for the love of all that's holy, don't take them in a group to the project, because the whole group speak is just going to go off the rails. But yeah, I mean, I think that regular communication in terms of, hey, here's what happened this week to our project. Here are the pictures. Here is, the progress that we made with this. Here's the progress that we made with that. And just kind of be proactive with that communication, again, in keeping with that expectation that you set. And, instead of leaving people just to kind of wonder what's going on with that, right? Because that's when they start to think, they're always going to default to the dark, right? Where it's like, if I don't hear anything, my assumption is that it's bad, right? So if you over communicate, or at least communicate on a regular schedule, then they're going to be cool with it and go on about their business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I always say that working with lenders is like managing personalities. And you don't want to have more than one personality on a project. Otherwise, it's like, when Sybil, right? It's 8 personalities and a whole bunch of crazy. So yeah, but anyway, go ahead, Mike.
Well, so now our listeners and viewers have found person that's ready to, invest, right? Maybe you don't have all the specifics. How do you typically want to structure these? Is there, obviously it can be very customized, much like most of the way we do real estate in the investment space, but how do you both like to structure the deals? When you pay them, what kind of installments, maybe we can avoid the interest because that can be kind of specific, but we can maybe talk about how we come to the interest point. We're just going to elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, my deals are what I call hybrid deals. It's always a debt deal with an equity kicker, meaning we are going to negotiate what that interest rate is going to be. The interest these are short term, right? I rarely used private money for long term because I did have that master loan commitment with my portfolio lenders. So that was the long term takeout. But once we negotiated what that interest rate was, the interest rate was always deferred. I told them it was going to be 6 months. I'd pay them a point if I needed to extend it for another 90 days, which definitely worked in my favor occasionally. We were able to, our average flip time at that, back when I was doing this back in the day, is probably about 4.5 months. So we were even able to pay them off a little bit early. But the way that it was structured was this interest payment is going to accrue, but it's all going to be paid to you when you get paid off by that takeout loan from my lender. But then I always gave what I call an equity kicker, which was a percentage of the profit, which was an unexpected little bonus that really went a long way with making sure that those people kept their money with me over and over and over again. So I always say debt with a equity kicker.
How much of a kicker do you typically do?
It would depend on the deal. I'd say it didn't have to be too big. I'm talking like maybe 5%, maybe 7%, these were my average all-in deal at that time on the single families was only like 170 grand. Once we got up into like the multifamily stuff, the kickers were a little less than that. I wasn't gonna give away all the profit or too much. But it's pretty cool to be able to hand somebody a return of capital, their deferred interest, and then also a bonus check of, $3,000-4,000. I mean, that's huge to somebody who is investing with us. And the majority of the people that invested with me were investing their retirement funds, right? So, I mean, where else are they going to be able to leverage their retirement money for that kind of income and capital gain? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So,
how do you structure yours, Don?
The first thing I want to say is in every conversation that I start with a new lender, I always ask them what their goals are. That's the first question. If they've lent before, like, what does that look like? How much interest do they usually ask for? And if they haven't, what would they like to see happen? Because, I'll pay a certain amount, I'm always interest, right? I structure it one lender, one deal. I do it just like a bank. We buy the property, we sell the property, they get paid back. And I pay interest in generally a point or so. And, but it's funny because when you have that conversation, if they ask for too much interest, then I'm in the position to say no. And that always swings, the conversation back to now they're scrambling to get my business instead of me scrambling to get theirs. And then if they ask for less than I'm typically willing to pay, it gives me an opportunity to decide on that project if the better interest rate is going to help me on that project, or if I'm in a good position to be generous and say, we typically pay a little bit more. So it gives me the opportunity to control the conversation a little bit more that way. So, but with that said, it's one lender, one project, interest. Generally now at this point in time, we do interest only, and we pay all interest at the close when we sell the property. So we're not making payments through the process, and we always do 100%. So I think Susan said the same thing, they cover it. And that's important, I think, in talking to a lender. Like, so many lenders want you to have skin in the game. And Mike, you've heard me say this a dozen times. It's like when you're growing a rehab business and you're putting skin in the game on every property, you go broke real fast. You don't have money in the bank because it's all on projects, and you become a bad bet. And so I always have that conversation with a lender that it's like, I'll keep reserves, I'll keep money in my account, but I'll run a healthy business. And because I'm doing that, I'm not putting any money into the project, but we're going to buy the project right. And I always set that up in the conversation so that they know going into it, they're funding 100%, but that keeps me in a position to make good decisions in my business. And I'm not ever in a point of desperation, just trying to dump a property to get money back. So,
yeah, I'm going to give your listeners a tip too. And this worked so well for me. And as part of that conversation, and the benefit of knowing, right, your exact investment criteria, you need, people are always like, well, what are you going to pay on this deal? Right? What kind of interest are you going to offer? And I'm always answering, well, how much can the deal afford to pay? Right. I don't know. I mean, if I just pull something out of the air, like, oh, I pay 10% interest, maybe this deal can't afford 10% interest, right? So first you have to know exactly what it is that you're doing. You have to run the numbers to know what the deal can afford. And let's say hypothetically that deal could potentially afford to pay 7% interest only. Cool. You're not going to tell that to your potential private money partner. Don't lead with that. That's the dumbest thing you could do. Part of my conversation, I always ask this question is, the money that you're considering investing with me, how much is it making now? And you're going to hear everything. I mean, you're going to hear all sorts of answers, right? If I know that I can afford to pay 7 and some dude is saying it's in it's in a CD and it's earning like 1.5% interest right now, then I'll kind of lean back, think about it for a second, think about it. Oh, gee, I don't know. Okay. What if I could double it? What if I could double that? Mm-hmm. Right. And now I just got private money for 3%. I double the return that dude's getting, and I save myself 4 points. Right. That's the magic question. And that's how we're able to get away with paying way below market interest rates every single time. Now, the flip side of that, to your point, is that if somebody is like, oh, well, you're in a booming market, or they're in something crazy and they're making like 12, 15, 20%, of course, you're not going to be able to double that. But that's not your guy. Right. That's when you say, awesome. When you get out of that, you're looking for another opportunity. Let's talk again. But I tell you, there are so many people out there who have money locked up in these low interest bearing whatevers, right? Whether it's an annuity or a CD or a savings account or mattress money or other deals that have gone bad or whatever it is. It's like, if you offer to double someone's return and you can get private money at 3.5%, oh my God, that's like not just a win-win, that's like a win-win-win, right? It's triple win.
Mm-hmm. I want to hammer that point home too, because a lot of people that are investing or before they started raising their own private financing, we all know what the industry rates are from a hard money lender. So we get excited trying to say, hey, can I give you 8, 9, 10, 12%? And I've seen a lot of people, turn tail and run because, like you said earlier, that sounds like a Madoff coming our way.
Exactly.
Because wait, how in the world can you give me 9% interest or something, right? Which I could often make work. But at the same point, yes, you could scare potential people away because we have what's stuck in our head as, hey, hard money is charging this. It's a little bit cheaper. They're going to love it. So right. I just want to reiterate that point because that is a great question that has saved me a little bit of interest from time to time.
That's how I scared off my own Uncle Bill, right? The person who probably loved me more than anybody on earth and trusted me more than anything. I'm like, Uncle Bill, I can pay you 15%. And he just started laughing. He's like, oh, yeah, you keep on thinking that, sweetheart. But here's the thing, right? If these are like, I was doing short-term loans. These were 6-month maximum terms. I was turning that money twice. If I'm offering somebody a 15% return, they're not getting 15%. It's a 6-month term. Person, do the math. You're getting 7.5% max, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, let's get realistic and let's call it what it is. We think that the bigger the number we throw at the person, the more that they're going to jump at the opportunity. But it's exactly what you said. The bigger the number, the faster they're going to run.
I've had the exact same experience. I remember having a conversation at a poker game and telling somebody I can give them 15%. This was pre-2008, and they basically laughed me out of my chair. So
yeah,
so yeah, no, I totally get it, and I couldn't agree more. Just to kind of share, I mean, I had a very similar experience with asking, somebody what they wanted, and it was funny because at the time it was a project I got paid 10% on. They're like, well, the rates are this and that, and blah blah blah, and so this plus this, I could, 4% will work. And I just kind of sat there and I was like, okay, I can do 10, but how about I give you 5? So, yeah.
I just don't know if I can make that work.
So exactly. But that's, so many people go in and they want to pitch, right? And, and that's, they want to just give them a number. And that, again, I just go in there and have a conversation. I mean, that's why I love so much. First of all, is it wrong of me to be stoked that you use the word dude several times in this podcast? I just love that, by the way. It's cool. That's one of the reasons why, I've recommended your book to so many people whenever they ask about raising private money, just because the fact that you align so much with just keeping it simple and being real and having a conversation and building relationships. I mean, it's like so many people don't hear that. And I want them to hear that. And I want them to hear it. And I want them to read your book 10 times because it's like, it's a basic process. It's a conversation. It's a relationship. It's creating win-wins for everybody. And if you can do that, you're going to be very, very successful and you're going to go a long way.
Absolutely. I agree. And thank you for saying that. Hey, that looks kind of familiar.
It's a great book. So I want to make sure people can see it when they're looking for it on Amazon.
That thing, man, that's a 5-year-old book and it still sells like crazy. It's nuts. I don't know. It's got legs. So it's saying something. People like you guys and, people on the call and other people that I hear from on a weekly basis continue to get value from it. And I'm thrilled. It's very humbling.
Mm-hmm. It's a great book. And I will tell you that anytime I do any kind of training on raising private money, it's one of the first things I show is go get this book. So I'll tell you that. Yeah. So there's not many, when it comes to money, there's not many people that I can say that I align with as much as I align with the book and I think your thought process behind it. And so being through 2008, being a tool, being arrogant, thinking whatever I touch turned to gold, and then being getting the rude awakening that I did, I was borrowing money wrong. I was going about the wrong way. I was offering 15 and 20%, and I wasn't thinking about the overall deal structure. And I was raising money, I was raising money unsecured. I don't know I'm not going to ask what your opinion on that is, but I was raising money unsecured, which I'm not comfortable doing anymore. It's by the project at this point in time because it was so scary trying to unwind that back then. And, it's just, so, doing it right, having the right intentions, making sure you have a plan, like you said, knowing your buying criteria. I think that's another thing that you hit on that I think is so incredibly important is don't just be, willy-nilly on everything. Know what you need to profit on a deal to make a deal work. And that goes a long way to success. So again, I sound like I think for the first time on a podcast, I sound like a starstruck
Got a fanboy.
fanboy, but it's just the point that, it's just the point that the message is important. It's not that hard, people. It's not that hard, but you gotta be genuine. You gotta be authentic. You gotta be willing to build the relationship that works both ways, and you can't concede your power. And if you do those things, you're going to be successful.
Yep.
So I saw your eyes light up when Don mentioned unsecured. So maybe for people who don't understand what that means exactly, hopefully we all do, but do you want to explain secured versus unsecured and then kind of share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I never raise unsecured money. Every penny that I raise is secured by the property. Always. It always has been. That's just my firm belief. I think that you can get in some big trouble when you are raising unsecured funds that, that aren't attached to a deal. I have a very good friend. She started out as my securities attorney, and now she's one of my besties. And we have had this conversation in some form or fashion, seriously, for like the last 20 years. It's all about disclosure, right? If you disclose what it is exactly that you're going to be using that money for and how that money is going to be secured, then you're going to be fine. And I remember once I even asked her, I'm like, so you're telling me that if I disclose to this private money partner that I'm going to take his money and I'm going to fly down to the Cayman Islands and I'm just going to blow it all on hookers and blow that, and I do that, and then he sues me, I'm going to be okay? She's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. She's like, I would caution against the actual terms hookers and blow, but you can like structure that in a way and, that it means what it means. She goes, but as long as you disclose what you're using the money for, you're going to be okay. I'm also a big firm believer in never touch the money, right? Don't ever put it in your personal account or your business account. Make sure that everything gets wired to escrow and it's attached to a transaction. And I am also a very big fan of making sure that I just lost my train of thought. It was going to be a good one too. All right. So don't touch the money. This is it. The big thing now, right? I started up a little Facebook group just because it's a timely thing. And people were like, we read the book, we have questions, help. And I'm like, fine, go to the group. The big battle that we're having with a couple of people is about personally guaranteeing these loans, right? There are so many people that say, oh, well, if I'm going to do this in the name of my company or my entity or my LLC, right? Even if you have the certification of authority, borrowing authority, right? And you're taking that money in the name of your entity, I always 100% of the time personally guarantee those loans. Always. And that's what I advise. And my question when people say, well, why would I want to do that? My answer back to them is, why wouldn't you? Because if you're borrowing 100% of the money to do your deal, to make your profit, to further your company, and you're not willing to personally guarantee that, what does that say about your deal? What does that say about your confidence? Right? I feel very strongly about that. And it's usually been a battle that I've had with people over the years who are raising private capital. I'm not going to begrudge people who don't personally guarantee or people who do it unsecured. That's fine. You do you, boo. Right? But as far as I'm concerned, I'm running a business. I run an honest business. I stand behind every single thing that I do. And if I screw up that deal, I don't care if it's in the name of my company. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to pay you back and that money is going to come back to you and you're going to be whole. Because again, the majority of the people that I raised capital from back in the day when I was really doing this in a big way, it was their retirement money. You really think I want to be on the hook to say, oh, I'm not going to personally guarantee Aunt Millie's retirement money? Come on.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. We have a comment.
Now let me just step down off my soapbox.
Fair enough. We have a comment here from Matthew. Basically, great stuff from everyone. I'm also part of Susan's Income Academy, and she has some amazing content. Haven't done much with it yet, but learning every day.
Oh, hey Matthew! Thanks for being here, man.
So just wanted to give that shout out there.
Cool. So, thanks, kiddo.
Yeah. So, Mike.
So I did have a follow-up question on the never touch the money. So
don't ever touch the money.
if you're funding a full rehab project, are you just getting draws then from the escrow office? Because I'll admit I've broken that rule.
Yeah, I do. I usually, the way that I structure it is we hold back at closing, she'll cut the checks. Like if I'm going to do 3 draws, there'll be 3 separate checks, right? Whatever it's going to be, 10 grand, 10 grand, 10 grand. Those will be the 3 draws. And then I put it upon myself. You're going to give somebody a checklist or your punch list of what you're going to do for your rehab. And it's like, okay, here's the first third that's going to be completed. And then I'm going to come to you and say, check, check, check. Right. And we can inspect it. And then you release that to me. And then the second, third, check, check, check. You can inspect it. You can release the second, third to me, and then check, check, check. We're done. But no, I personally, for me, I don't touch the money. I prefer to have it doled out by escrow.
Yeah, see, in my area, escrow doesn't want to do that. We went round and round with escrow companies, so we've done it one of 2 ways. One is we get the rehab money up front and we just put it in a separate account and draw down from it as we need it. And then the second way is we actually have the lender do a holdback, and then the lender disperse to us as we draw. So there's risk to that, obviously, if the lender holds back the money and then you do the rehab and you go to draw and they don't have the money anymore.
That's hard. When you're working with Aunt Millie, like, okay, Aunt Millie, I'm ready for the next check. She's like, oh, honey, I don't know where I put those checks. What am I looking at with this thing? No, don't do that.
Yeah.
I try to control everything that you can possibly control in the transaction, but make sure that you're doing everything appropriately. And, to your point, if escrow doesn't want to do it, maybe there's you can appoint, there's going to be some dude, like some third party guy that, you can pay him maybe $15 an hour to come out and do your rehab draw inspection and kind of check the checklist and then sign off on it and say, all right, let's release the next installment of the repair money from escrow. There's ways around that, but I really feel very strongly about don't touch the money. I've seen too many people get in trouble that way. And I just think that the less temptation there is, the better.
Yeah. And I want to be clear, like what you're saying is a lot of people will get like a chunk of money in their account from a lender, and they might make payroll or do their marketing out of it and then replenish it with income the next week. And they think that's okay. And
it's not okay.
And if anything ever goes bad in that transaction and it gets looked at, it's the appearance of impropriety. Even if that money was replaced by income and blah, 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 it's commingled and it becomes that appearance of impropriety. And that's the kind of stuff that really gets people in trouble.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we're wrapping up in about 8 minutes or less. Is that right, Don? The first time hosting this.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, what do you, if there's no questions out there, but what would you all, both of you say, if someone's afraid of getting started or they are trying to increase their amount of money, like what do you think the biggest hurdles they might need to jump over are, and possibly how can we help them get over that?
Why don't you go, Susan?
I worked with a person once. Her name is Zoe, and she's fine with me sharing this story. I've shared it many times. She was terrified to pitch anybody or, invite anybody to hear about her deal. She put together, just a quick presentation about here's about our company. Here's what we do. Here are the kind of deals that we invest in. But she just froze up when it came to, inviting somebody to sit down and listen to it, or, even just meet her for margaritas and chips and salsa. And so one of the things that I encouraged her to do was then kind of do an indirect approach, right? Reach out to people that and say, you know what? I'm starting a new business, or I'm starting a new component of my business, and I have a new presentation that I've put together that I'm going to start sharing with people. And I would really appreciate it if you'd sit down with me and let me go through it with you to practice it and have you give me some honest feedback and give me some tips on how I can improve. It did 2 things. Number one, it made it really easy and not scary at all for her to pitch people, right? To reach out to them and say, hey, let's sit down and let me tell you about what I'm doing. But I also knew, I didn't share this with her, I just knew it was going to happen organically, that once she went through that information and shared what she was doing, the people were going to go, okay, well, maybe tighten up, that part of what you said, or maybe don't say this. But then they were also going to say, is this real? And if so, how do I get involved? Right. So it was kind of like the backdoor pitch. And I don't think she's ever made a direct pitch to anybody. I think she just always is stuck with that approach just because it feels a lot more comfortable for her. So the bottom line is that you have to start, and you have to start where you are. And where you are is with friends, with family, with people who know you, who love you, who trust you, and ultimately who want to see you succeed and really want to help you. So give them the opportunity to do that.
I really like the backdoor model. It does help take the teeth off it a lot for people, especially if they are worried about friends and family, because then it truly can. You can work it both ways. It can truly be a practice, and people are going to start going, whoa, whoa, whoa. How do I get into this?
Exactly.
And a little mind hack is I've been in sales since I basically got out of college in 2008, when it was an awesome time to get into job market. But what I really found was, actually start kind of chasing the no's versus the yeses. So then it kind of feels like a win. And the more no's you get, eventually it's going to turn into a yes. Yeah. So I always like that idea too, just kind of mental hacking it a little bit, because, hey, my goal is to go get 100 no's this week. Well, it's going to be really hard to likely get that many no's.
Yeah.
You got to be doing something real, real wrong. But man, if you're expecting 100 and you get to 99, you should be stoked. Like, dude, the yes is so close. I can taste it. Love it.
We have a question that popped up here, and it says basically, great stuff. At what point in raising capital would you need to register with the SEC? You want to answer that?
I have no idea.
From what I know, and I'm not an SEC attorney, but there are certain things you got to do. You got to be careful of. You got to be building a true relationship with somebody, having multiple conversations. I know there's like a Reg D filing. To be honest with you, again, I'm not an attorney, and obviously a lot of that's gonna transpire when you're raising unsecured funds, which is not something I do. When you're pulling money, you're going to have some serious conversations with SEC attorneys. When you're actually putting a large fund together, like an actual fund, you're going to have those conversations. On the private level, I have had conversations with attorneys when it comes to raising money on the private level, one lender, one project, with people that I have relationships with, is kind of how I do it. If I was going to have more than one lender, pull lenders on projects, I'd probably have a serious conversation with an attorney to see what my obligations are going to be. And of course, if I was going to do something on a larger scale, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Susan, as well.
Yeah. This could be, dudes, this could be like a 3-day workshop all on its own. Right. But I will tell you that if you're doing just a one-to-one private deal with somebody who's known to you, I usually just make sure that there's some sort of a disclosure statement, and that disclosure statement is going to be whatever your state's blue sky law is going to be. Mm-hmm. And you can just Google that. Like, I live in California now. I've only been here for 2 years, and I haven't raised any capital since I've been here because I don't do that anymore. But when I was living in Colorado, there was just like this one sentence that you just had to include in your disclosure statement. And I just added it to the prom note. Right. That just said, hey, this is not a registered security, and, be smart. You could lose all your money. And as long as, you satisfy that requirement, then that's fine. Now, when the SEC starts to get hinky is when you start pooling capital, right? When you start putting multiple private money partners together on one deal. And there are some things that you can do. Like my favorite structure, if you can get away with it and your deal is such, is a fractionalized trust deed, where you can have one deed of trust and each partner has their own promissory note with their own disclosure. If you're going to get into a syndication, right? And that's when we're starting to talk about, okay, we're dealing with non-accredited people versus accredited investors. The project is in one state, the investors might be in another state. And now there's other, we have inter and intrastate things going on and multiple investment partners, that's when you really need to register with the SEC. It's usually a Form D, and then you have to choose your structure. Back in the day, we were doing 506Ds. Now you got your C structure, right? Which allows you to do, within reason, some mass solicitation to people that are unknown to you, as long as you know for a fact that they're accredited investors. But I write about this in my book, and this is a policy that I have always followed, and I will continue to follow, even if the rules change at some point. And I call it the 45-day rule. The SEC just doesn't want you to pitch non-accredited people that you don't have a pre-existing relationship with. And it's, in their verbiage, is a substantive pre-existing relationship with. So I just kind of invented this thing called the 45-day rule that said, look, I got to know you for 45 days and have contact with you, a minimum personal contact with you, a minimum of 3 times before I can actually pitch you my deal. And that contact can be an email, it could be a phone call, it could be, the chips and salsa and margarita, it can be whatever. But I'm never, if somebody says, oh, Susan, I want to introduce you to my friend. This actually happened to me. This is a crazy story. Went to dinner with a friend of mine. She had a friend who was loaded, right? She flew in on our private jet, go to dinner. Her name was Linda. She had a couple of martinis. I counted 3. I think there was more. So there was something going on. And she's like, what do you do? I told her what I did. And she's like, so how do you usually fund that stuff? And I said, well, I usually use it, I fund it with individual investment partners. And she's like, well, how much do you usually get from the people? And I'm like, it just really depends. I was being super duper vague. She reaches down, takes out her checkbook. She's like, name the price. I'll just write a check to you now. I want to get in on your next deal. And I was like, no, like, you remember that old series Lost in Space, right? Will Robinson, robot, like, no, danger, Will Robinson. I couldn't get out of that damn restaurant fast enough. I run, right? I'm like, Linda, okay, we got a couple of problems. First of all, like, you're intoxicated. Can't work with intoxicated people. Number 2, I don't know you. Right? We have to have a substantive pre-existing relationship before I can even really give you specific details about what I'm doing. And you can't write me a check. If we're going to do something, you're going to wire it to escrow. So I had to slow her roll and make sure that she followed the rules. But, that's really the way you do it. As long as you are taking the time, and we keep using this word, and I hope that we keep using this word, and that everybody on this keeps using this word and remembers that as long as you keep taking the time to develop that relationship with your private money partner, then you're going to be okay. It's when you don't, and you start breaking rules like that, and you start getting greedy and dollar signs in your eyes that things go awry, that's when you're going to get yourself in trouble.
100%.
That sounds like a great place to wrap this up. That was amazing. And thank you so much, Don. Thank you for letting me steal the podcast for today. Susan, thank you for joining us. And, let everybody know how to find you if they want to reach out in any way. And obviously we've promoted it a few times, but Getting the Money on Amazon or wherever you find books is a great tool to have on your bookshelf. So yeah, why don't you let us know where we can get in touch?
Yeah. So grab a copy of the book, head over to Amazon. You can pick it up there. There's also a website I have, gettingthemoney.com. There's a link right to Amazon where you can buy the book. And there's also a link if you want to join our free Facebook group and come on in and, kind of see what we're doing and ask some questions and start engaging there and see what happens.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Don. You want to sign off with anything? I don't want to take this all the way from you.
No, you're good. I think just we got to make sure that we let people know if they want to be part of an incredible mastermind community that we're surrounding ourselves with incredible people and like-minded, go in the same direction, fighting the same battle. Make sure you check out beinthisroom.com to check out the Inner Circle Elite community and see what we have to offer. I mean, that's what I got. So
Awesome.
Well, thanks so much, everybody, for joining us.
All right. Thank you.